Hi there, this is Jeanette for Whimsy Stamps. Today I wanted to share with you some Copic no-line coloring. So basically that is when you stamp an image or print an image with very light lines, which when you color over them, the lines of the illustration sort of fade away and you're left with just your coloring. So I have used this beautiful image that was just released this June 2017. It's called Star Princess, and this is the image that I used to do my coloration. So you can see here I have it stamped very lightly with some London Fog Memento ink. Now you can go even lighter than this, but since I'm not an expert, I guess I would say at this, because I haven't done it often enough, I thought I would try to do it with lines that were, although they were fainter than I'm used to, they're not almost non-existent, which is what some people are able to do. So this is sort of a starter or a beginner sort of version of no line coloring. So you could see that I left the numbers of my markers that I used at the top of the screen a little earlier, and they're all listed in the order that I used them. And now that I'm using the darker markers, you're going to start to see that that light gray line is going to actually start to disappear a little bit. So I'm being very careful not to go over any areas that I don't want colored, because those lines might disappear and then I might have a little bit of trouble sort of coloring the dress or the lace. So this is something where you have to go a little more slowly than you're used to. Sometimes it helps, I think, if you have a version stamped out with strong ink, so you can really refer to that as you go along when you start losing some of the lines, to make sure that you're working in the confines of the illustration. So this is my darkest color that I'm going to be using for the skin, and it is E04, and you can see I'm sort of tracing mostly the outline of everything. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that next darker shade, so it's a little bit lighter, and I'm going to blend out that line. Again, I'm not moving too much in towards the image. I'm really blending it right where the line is. Then I will go in with the sort of middle shade, which is E00, and again blending. This time I'm working more towards the center of the image, blending everything out. And that's just my colorless blender that I'm using. If the color goes outside the lines, I can push it in. Here I'm putting some cheek color in with some R20 and then blending it out with some R30. And now this is my lightest shade. This is my E00, and I'm using that to blend everything out, color everything in. I'm going to put some eyebrow color in there using E53, and I will darken the line of the mouth with that same color. Then I'm going in with some R30, and I'm sort of drawing her lips in between those two lines. Then I'm moving in with some E04 to make it more pronounced, and then I'm coloring it in with R20. And that way I have sort of a pronounced lip line that wasn't there before, but I think it really looks nice with the image. For the eyes, I'm going in again with a dark color. This is E55, putting that in, and I'm tracing around the outline of the eye as well as her eyelashes, and that gives some definition to where the eye is going to be. I'm now coloring in the center of her eyes with a sort of lighter blue, and then towards the upper left I'm darkening it with some more blue, and then an even darker blue. So you can see I have sort of a graduated eye color there that's darker on the top, lighter on the bottom. And I'll just work at that blend until it's the way I like it. And you can see how now the lines for the eyes have completely disappeared. The only thing you see is what I've added. Then I just took a pencil and I drew in the pupils of her eyes, and I just worked at it a little at a time. I didn't want to make them too dark or too big, and I just worked at it until they looked nice. And once I was satisfied with that, I went in with my Copic multi-liner and made it permanent. So when I did it with the pencil, if it wasn't the way I liked it, I could have erased it. Once I go in with the Copic multi-liner, there's no erasing it. And then I did darken around the edges of her eyes and her eyelashes with the Copic multi-liner. And this is a 0.03 black multi-liner. So you can see how this has added so much life to her eyes. And then I'm going to take a white gel pen and just dot in some highlights to her eyes, and that just really brings everything to life. I'm going to darken up her eyebrows a little bit now with E55. Just make them a little bit more pronounced. And again, just touching up around the eyes until I'm totally happy. I did end up making that side a little bit bigger just because it seemed a little small, so I just enhanced the edges a little bit. Now for her hair, I'm just going to cover like a base coat, I guess, of color with a light E50, just color everywhere. Then I'm going to take this darker marker and I'm going to start tracing where the lines are already there. I'm going to trace those lines that I can see and start adding some lines of my own as well. So you can see how I trace where all the folds and the curls are, and then I just add a few more lines myself, sort of flicking upwards or downwards towards the center of each curl. Do the same here. And you can see that once you start putting marker color, because it was stamped with such a light ink, those lines just disappear. So I always find it useful to use my darker marker to do this, just so that I know it's going to stay and it's dark enough for me to see. So I apologize, my hand is a little bit in the way here. I had the camera zoomed in so far, I didn't realize that you couldn't see. And then I'm just going to go back to where I already colored and just deepen some of those lines. And this is just something that you have to sort of do, stop, take a look at it, and then just add a little bit more where you need it. So I'm going to do the exact same thing on this other side here. Draw in those lines that are already there for the curls, reinforce them, and then just add a few of my own. This was such a fun image to color. I really encourage you to find an image like this one. This artist has illustrated many similar girl images for Whimsy stamps. They're all so beautiful, and they're all really well suited to this no line coloring. I think you'd have a lot of fun doing it. So I just have these final curls here to do. And you can see how the hair looks so pretty now. You can see the curls, you have the highlights, you have the sort of shadows. And then I'll go back again and just reinforce some of those areas, just darkening them up. Because sometimes by darkening an area, you actually make the hair look lighter because there's so much more contrast between the dark and the light. Then I'll just take my lighter color here and I'll fill in some of the areas that are still quite white, just sort of blend them a little bit. Not totally, but just so that there's a little bit more color there. And again, sorry, I'm out of screen sometimes. I like to zoom in so that you can see what I'm doing, but then sometimes it goes off screen. So I'm going to move on to coloring the crown now. I want to make that a nice gold color. So I do find when I am doing no line coloring, I find it is a little bit easier to sort of trace around the periphery where the lines are with your darker marker. That gives you your boundaries, and then just sort of blend in your other colors. And I'm going to work at that until it's a nice blend. You don't see any lines. And also so that the crown is dark enough when it's sitting on her head that it does differentiate itself from the hair. I decided to do her dress a pretty green color. I thought that worked really well with the sort of blonde of her hair and the blue of her eyes. And again, you can see I'm starting with that darker color. I just find it a lot easier to do it this way with no line coloring, and then I just blend out with my lightest color. Using that lighter marker and the mid-tone here in the bodice area just to make it a little bit lighter than the sleeves. Decided that I was going to color the gemstones in her crown the same color as her dress. So I'm blending those up a little bit. So then I realized that I really couldn't color my stars golden or yellow. There was already too much gold, too much yellow there. So I decided to just trace them with a gray marker. So you can see I'm outlining them. And this was sort of off plan. I hadn't really thought well enough ahead. So this is what I decided to do. So now I'm just adding a little bit of a lighter gray to shade the bottom portion of the stars. And again, I just wanted to brighten up that eye highlight and the lace with a gel pen. So now I'm going to go in with some stickles. This is in the color Platinum. So it's sort of a darker gold, I guess, sort of got a little bit of gray in there. So I just put some stickles in the middle of the star and then push it to the edges, to the points. And then what I did is I added some glossy accents over top that. And this is what I got. I got a really beautiful sort of smooth surface to the stars that also had some glitter in it. So now I'm going to take that die that you saw. This is from the rectangle die from Whimsy. It's the second largest one. Cut that out. And I'm using some beautiful metallic gold paper to cut out the word Celebrate, which is also a die from Whimsy. And I'm going to leave all the links to everything I used below this video. Then I'm just checking the size of my die cut here, and then I'm going to cut a mat that is just half an inch larger so that I have a 1/4 inch on each side showing, and I'll adhere that to the mat. Then I will mount this on top of my card base using some foam tape. So although this is a very simple card, by mounting this on top of the card base, it does give it a little something extra special. I really like how that looks. And then I'll be able to glue the Celebrate right on top. I'm just poking out any of the insides of the letters that didn't fall out, using some Zig glue and my tweezers here to position that right on top of the card, and I will put a block on it so that it will dry nicely adhered. And the final thing that I'm going to do is add some of these little enamel dots to the front of my card. Just a scattering of a few in different sizes, all in that green shade. And that is my card all finished. I hope you enjoyed watching me color a no line coloring technique with Copic markers. And as I said before, you'll find a full list of all the supplies that I use below this video on YouTube, or you can check it out on my blog posting. Thank you so much for watching.